Hi, I've been asked to make a video to show how to measure a parachute. So here's my setup. I've got a tape measure and I've got a point that's set at the 0 point that I can anchor my lines to. This particular tape is in inches and centimeters, which is going to be helpful because the trim chart we're going to be doing today is in centimeters, which is my own personal preference. For those of you that are not familiar with them, it's about 2.5 centimeters to an inch. Another way to think of that is 10 centimeters is about 4 inches, but you guys can do that by yourselves. So to make this video easier to understand, I've removed the slider on this parachute. Hopefully you'll notice that I have set up the A, B, C and D lines on size 3.5 mini links. I've also put the end of the brake to toggle line on my 0 point here. What I'll do now, very first of all, is I will go and I'll measure the A lines. I've got an Excel program here just to jot the measurement down in, but you can jot it down any way you want. There are different names used for different positions on a parachute. This particular trim chart has the end cell as 5, so A5, B5, C5 and D5 are attached there, and 1 is the center cell. Doesn't really matter as long as you don't get confused, so you know how to document it and you know what you're measuring. I'm also going to use a calibrated scale. That doesn't matter too much, but it does matter. If you don't know how much force you're putting on the line, be very careful if you think later on you're going to throw stones at someone because the lines are the wrong length or whatever, because you may not be as sure as they are of what's going on. This particular parachute, which is a Crossfire 189, should be measured under 5 kilograms of load. That's about 10 pounds. And to do that, we take our calibrated scale and we slide it through the line attachment point, being careful not to damage anything. And the point we're actually going to measure to is the loaded row. That's this row of white stitch in here. We're lucky this one has a bar tack as well that you can see. So this is the loaded seam and the loaded row being the one inboard. I'll now put this under my 5 kilograms of tension, and I've just taped this off so that I can't overdo it. And now I'll take a look at where the loaded row lines up, and it is 252.2. So let me jot that down. 252.2. I'll now go to A4, and I'm going to keep repeating this, and I apologize, I might even fast forward through this in a minute in the video. 259.2. 259.2. Just so that you know, I have already entered the information from the trim chart, and if I see anything that's looks like an anomaly, like it's substantially out of trim compared to the other lines, I will remeasure that, because every now and then you just have a simple notation error where you wrote it down wrong. 256.2. Now we're on to A2. $253.
Wanker!
And we'll measure this one, and it's 253.3. 253.3. Moving on. Gotta love the FedEx guy. See you later, man. And now we'll go on. I did not plant that. That just happened. We'll go on now to our outside B line. Okay, in you go. There we go. Outside B line. 256. 1. 256. 1. 4 this time. 263, 7. Two 59, 7. Two 56, 5. Center line. Two 56, 9. C lines. I just got the wrong one. Yep, I got the B again. Like I said, if you see an anomaly, check yourself. It's more like it. 268, 7. C4. Two 76. C3. 272, 9. Two 69, 6. And center cell. Being as careful as I can to not let the information from the trim chart influence what I'm seeing here. It's very easy to start reporting what you want instead of what you see. You want to avoid that. 269, 7, 269, 7. Outside D line, you can probably see I'm coming in through the back now. It's a little harder to get a clear view of the line. It's 280. To 90.4. Three. Two 89. 3. D2. 286, 6, 286. 287, 2. Alright, so suspension lines are done. We're on to the control lines. So what I've done is I've anchored the end of the toggle loop, and I'm now going to measure from here to the very beginning of the brake set loop. Just a word on this: if you were measuring a PD, instead of going from here to here, you'd go from the top of the toggle loop to the top of the brake set loop. You'd actually end up with something incredibly close, within a few millimeters, just so you know. But I want to do this one right, so I'm going to measure from the end of the toggle loop to the beginning of the brake set loop. I'm just going to put this under the same tension. So the loop, you guys may struggle to see it, is right here, so that's coming out at 34.6 centimeters. And now I'm just going to drop the brake set loop onto the 0, and I'm going to remember that 34.6. I'll jot that down. Now, on the trim chart that I received, it didn't have a measurement for the lower steering line, often called the LST. I have no idea what the T is about, but the lower steering line. What I'm going to do, though, is I will measure this for those of you that are using a trim chart that does have it. So just put this under tension, and this one measured out at about 202, which I've already jotted down. Moving over now to the upper steering lines, USTs. Again, I don't know what that T is all about, but maybe someone will be kind enough to tell me. And a very similar system. I'm going to mark to this loaded row on the tail, essentially the same point. You've got the twin needle seam set at 1/4 inch. It's the inboard row. Again, I'm going to use my scale to make sure I'm measuring everything in a consistent manner. 281.5. Now we'll go to the next UST, which on this parachute is UST 3. I should say on this trim chart is UST 3. 284.7. UST 4. 290.1. 290.1. And lastly, UST 5. 298.8. 298.8. Great, so we've got all that data now. Now we've got to go and make sense of it. And I'll show you how we'll do that now. So this is the trim chart that we were provided from Icarus. As you can probably see, you've got all the numbers down this side here and what line that relates to. And on this number system, again, 5's the outside, 1's the center. That has no effect on your measurements, though if they used a different system, just make sure you know which line you're talking about. Alrighty, now let's take a look at the numbers we just captured. A little bit better set up than that. There we go. So, these are the numbers from that trim chart we just looked at. And then these are the numbers that I just measured. And you'll notice that in the A row of lines, the lines we measured are coming out as just over 6.7 centimeters longer than is on the trim chart. And then if we take a look at the B lines, we'll notice they're coming out 9 centimeters longer. C lines 6 something centimeters longer on average. and then D lines, yeah, 6 something on average. So for the most part, everything's about 6 or so centimeters long, with a little bit of Kentucky windage there to say that about the B lines. Don't freak out. A lot of people do. They get very married to that number as an absolute. It doesn't really matter a great deal that the parachute is 252 centimeters from your head or 245 centimeters from your head. What matters is the shape of the parachute. So how those numbers relate to each other matters far more than a specific length of a line. So here we see that they're all coming out pretty close. So if we assume, again, that's 6.5 centimeters, we call this 6.5 centimeters, we call this 6.5 centimeters. We've only got the B lines coming in at, 2.5, 3 centimeters longer, which is about an inch. Now, I know a lot of people won't like what I'm about to say, but that won't make much difference to you. Especially when you get onto bigger parachutes, it starts to make even less difference. Now, I'm not going to claim that when you're on one of those crazy little flying machines, Valkyrie, Petra, whatever, yes, it starts to matter a lot more. But for this, not so much. And I want to just scroll up a little bit now and take a look at what we captured for information on the steering system. Well, hey, the brake to toggle line, perfect. It's 0.4 of a centimeter too long, which is nothing. We didn't have this measurement, so that's just for my records. And then if we take a look at the rest of the steering system, it's coming out about 10 centimeters too long. So about 4 inches for those of you that need to think that way. But wait a minute, we already said the whole line set's about 6.5 centimeters longer than that absolute number we use. So now we're down to 3.5, 4 centimeters difference. It's about that. And I think most people would be generous enough to agree with me that it's very common in skydiving for people to have their brakes 3 or 4 inches longer or 3 or 4 inches shorter. And that will have a much greater effect on the overall flying of your parachute than this itty bitty little difference here. So I would actually say this parachute is pretty much in trim. Now, if you're someone who needs absolutes and you dig around, or you're a dropzone.com type person, you will find information out there that says the baseline measurement of your A line should be plus or minus 1 inch, I believe. And all the other lines on your parachute, B, C, D, and control, should be plus or minus a half an inch. Well, that's great, and it's good to have an absolute written down, but that still has a pretty big margin in it. So bear that in mind if you're going to freak out. The last thing I want to take a look at here is going back to that absolute number again of an A line or any line, which is, remember, we measured these on size 3.5 links. Well, if it was assembled on 5s or 4s or slinks, then the distance the parachute is from your head is going to change. If it's on slinks, it's going to be a little closer. If it's on number 5s, it's going to be a little further away. But the control lines are going to stay the same because the link doesn't affect them. Let's see if we can see that when we take a look. So let's take a little bit of a look at how setting the parachute up on different size links or slinks will affect the ultimate length of any given line. So this bottom one here, this line group is set up on a slink. So it's going to be shorter than the lines that we measured earlier that were set up on a number 3.5, because it essentially starts right where the riser ends. So the line starts right at that point. But if it was set up on a number 5 link, it would be quite a bit longer. It'd be a little over 3 centimeters longer than a measurement for a line on a slink. And then the 3.5, which is what we used earlier, commonly known as a mini link, is going to be different again, a little shorter than a 5, a little longer than a slink. And the only reason I show you this is just to let you know that a little bit of a discrepancy in the total length of the line is not a big deal. It's the platform that matters, and because all the lines are attached to the same kind of length, the whole parachute might be an inch further away from your head or an inch closer. Get over it, it doesn't matter. But I do want to take a moment and look at the control lines, because no matter what it's set on, they are going to be the length they are independent of this. So it will affect whether the parachute's in, let's say, an inch more brake or an inch less brake. And it will affect it in full flight as to whether it's got an extra inch of full flight, if you will, or an inch less. You can adjust that here if you want to. I actually don't recommend that you monkey around too much with the set-in. For those of you that like to fly around with them shortened up 3 inches, you're actually flying around in 3 inches of brake. It's no big deal, but you're going to lose a bit of your stopping power later on. It makes less of an effect to leave them 3 inches long. It just means that you'll have to pull down for a further 3 inches before the tail really starts to do anything. Well, I hope this video was helpful. Please go easy on the hate mail. I'm not out there to try and change the world and have you do things my way. I just get a lot of people asking me about this. Good luck.